Welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Report, brought to you by Red Raider Outfitter, the fans' favorite since 1975. I'm Jarret Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Mighty Joe, man, how you doing?
Well, doing all right, man. Just trying to keep from blowing away. That's why we're under this tunnel right now.
Yeah, we're under.
Howling out here.
It really is. We're under a tunnel at the Jones because we're going to talk football. This really is the off season. I know baseball season's still going, but really for us and the bulk of our customers or subscribers, football, basketball, it's off season, it's recruiting season. But one of the things that we've been doing is going over the depth chart on football coming out of spring ball. I posted a projection. It's not set in stone. I'm not even sure the coaches two deep is set in stone at this point. But, after going to a lot of practices, talking to the players, talking to the coaches, I think we have a pretty good idea. But I wanted to do a video and get your opinion on the story I posted with the two deep. So let's start with offense. We'll have a video on defense coming out later. Obviously, let's start with the quarterbacks. Have Shuck going number one and the Red Baron number two.
Yeah, I think that's obviously the most pat position on offense and possibly the most pat position on the entire team.
Yeah.
You could go with DT and cornerback as well. But, those are the two guys. That's your starter. Shuck, that's your backup, Baron. And nothing's going to change there. It's an extremely solid, very good 1-2 punch. That's the last position that I'm worried about there, and probably the coaches feel the same way on that.
I know neither quarterback looked especially good in the spring game, especially Shuck. Does that bother you at all?
No, not at all. I mean, what counts is what you've actually done against live competition. And Shuck, once he finally got healthy and stayed healthy in the second half of last season, he showed what he could do, and I'm convinced now. So that does not concern me really at all.
Yeah, my only concern with Shuck is obviously the injuries.
Yes.
He had two major injuries in consecutive seasons here at Texas Tech. He did bounce back last season. Of course, led them to 4 straight victories as a starter, including was MVP of the Texas Bowl. But he took a lot of big hits, Joe, which showed some toughness and maybe some ability to stay healthy.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much design quarterback run they went with. And so I guess they're pretty confident about his resiliency, his toughness, and I guess the idea is, hey, this is your quarterback. This is his job to run the offense. This is part of the offense, so he's going to run it. So you saw actually quite a bit that last year, and he showed no ill effects.
Yeah, and if unfortunately something was to happen, or if something unfortunate was to happen to Shuck and he did get injured, I have full confidence in Baron more than he can move this offense. I expect either quarterback who's out there to put up big numbers. Going to running back, speaking of 1-2 punch, Taj Brooks is the starter. Coach McGuire has said that he's the leader in that room, but Cameron Valdez adds another dimension. Those are your two guys with Bryson Donnell right there too as well.
Yeah, another great position for Texas Tech. I don't know how widespread this view is, but I've got a feeling that Brooks is going to have a massive year this year. I think I'm not going to quite go out there and say 1,000 yards, but it would not shock me.
Really?
It depends on, obviously the pass run breakdown a little bit. I mean, last year it was pretty doggone balanced. For Cliff Kingsbury offensive coordinator, right, and Kitley, we were all a little bit concerned that it was going to be a 70-30, 75-25 pass run type of a deal, but it was closer to 50-50. And, I think Brooks really can tear it up this year. I think he's ready to take that step forward. And then Valdez, is a really good change of pace sort of back, a really good position. Again, not anything that I'm worried about.
And then going to outside receiver, they bring back some veterans, and they added through the transfer portal Jaron Bradley, Loic Fungi, J.J. Sparkman, and Dre McCray is the new guy coming in from Austin P, a speedster. What do you think about that group in terms of a 1-2 at outside?
Yeah, I think the one guy that is your absolute starter there is Jaron Bradley.
Yeah.
And I think at the other position, you could go with any one of those three guys. You got Dre McCray in there as the starter in your piece. That may very well turn out to be the case. But then again, it could be Loic Fungi.
Yeah.
It could be possibly J.J. Sparkman. I think Fungi is going to be kind of hard to keep off the bench. and it may be one of those deals where at that position, all three of those guys start some games. But the good thing is I do believe that all three can get the job done. Bradley is a potential all Big 12 type of receiver.
Yeah, and Fungi, the same thing as Shuck. If he can stay healthy, I mean, 6'4", great speed. I don't think he gets enough credit for how fast he is. I mean, he was one of the top sprinters in Texas coming out of Midland Lee back in the day. Inside receivers, I think they're really loaded here, Joe. It's almost like you kind of wish they'd run two inside receivers a lot. Miles Price, Xavier Wyatt, Nehemiah Martinez are the first three that come to mind. Known quantities, guys who've got it done in the past already.
Yeah, and again, three guys, any of them could start, any of them could get the most snaps, and you'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
You got Price in there as a starter, and I'm sure that's right. He's a productive veteran, a kind of a team leader sort of a guy, the sort of guy that you kind of feel like has earned the start, and he may very well be the most productive player at that position. But I love Nehemiah Martinez too. I mean, that's a guy, he doesn't have quite the burst and the quickness that Miles has or that Xavier White does,
right.
But he is a really physical, tough sort of a guy. If you're playing against a team where they're jamming you, those DBs, he's a guy who can cut through all that contact and get some stuff done. I really like him a lot.
Joe, up next we got tight end, also a known quantity. Three guys coming back who, played a lot last season. Baylor Cupp is who I had as a starter. That's who started the spring game. But really, I could see any of these three guys, including Mason Tharp, who was on the no contact list this spring, 6'9", legit 6'9", dude who could run. And then Henry Teeter, who does all the grunt work and is probably the best blocker of the three.
Yeah, another extremely stout position with all kinds of depth. Three guys you feel great about. You got Cupp in there. And you make the good point in your piece that he's probably the best combination of blocking and passing out of that group, or blocking and catching out of that group. So yeah, he's probably going to be your starter. But I love Teeter too as well. I mean, that's a guy who gives you a real physical presence there. I think he's an underrated receiver as well. I mean, every time I see him go out to catch a pass, he looks really good.
Yeah.
Gets the ball in his hands, goes straight upfield, doesn't mess around. And there's always a voice in the back of my mind saying, maybe I got to get this guy the ball a little bit more. So I like both of those guys. And then, of course, Tharp is a guy who should be in an NFL camp one of these days, just based on his dimensions and his measurables alone, regardless of his productivity. May not get drafted, but probably an FA guy. Hey, three intriguing prospects there all bring something good to the table.
Yeah, and then we go to the all-important position group, other than quarterback, offensive line. That was a much maligned position last year that struggled, but I really thought improved towards the end of the year, which coincided with that 4-game win streak. There's been some changes up front, despite a lot of guys coming back. First off, a couple of transfers in there that's worth mentioning. Both played for Zach Kitley and offensive coordinator Zach Kitley and offensive line coach Stephen Hamby at Western Kentucky before. Cole Spencer, who transferred in prior to last year, had to sit out but is expected to play right guard. And then Rusty Stats, who transferred in from Western Kentucky this offseason. Both guys have been all-conference performers. Both guys are expected to be a big part of what you want to do on the interior of your offensive line. Stats holding down that center position. Spencer holding down one of the guard position. Dennis Wilburn, who came, for me, kind of out of nowhere and took over the starting center spot and never let go of it all of last year, started every game, and did really well, I thought, overall. He moves over to guard. So those are three pretty big veteran stout guys on the interior. And then on the outside, you had the bookends flip. Caleb Rogers, who just has struggled. I mean, that's just the bottom line, especially with athletic speed rushers. There's no shortage of those in the Big 12. Him and Monroe Mills, who I thought played pretty well overall, better than I was expecting at right tackle. They flipped. Mills is at left tackle. Rogers is at right tackle. What do you think about that starting group?
Yeah, I really, really like the three guys on the inside. I think they're all three physical guys, run blocking, road grader type guys, and Tech's interior ground attack should be great with them and Taj Brooks back there, the ground and pound sort of a running back. I like that in between the tackle game, was particularly on the ground. You got Jacoby Jackson's a pretty good backup for those guys as well, can do some good things. At the tackle position, it's one of those deals where I'm not sure the starters are a whole lot better than the backups. You know, I mean, you got Keeler and Buchanan as the backup tackles, and I think all 4 of those guys are going to rotate a lot. You know, I'm not just absolutely sold on any of the 2 starters right now. So, you know, I think those backup tackles, Keeler and Ty Buchanan, could wind up getting just about as much reps as the starters. All 4 of those guys could play quite a bit.
Yeah, Joe, and another guy to mention in terms of backup, at least projection, he might start. Well, probably won't start, but he'll probably play a lot. Is Landon Peterson. He started several games last year on the interior, and missed a lot of spring, so it's easy to kind of forget him. Plus, it's interior offensive line. It's just not the sexiest position, but he showed some things. He's a veteran, and they will rotate some of the interior guys to keep them fresh. They did that last year with Jacoby Jackson, the guy you mentioned earlier, and I think it makes the offensive line all the better, especially with some of that ground and pound style that you were talking about. But that's our projection for the 2 deep on offense for Texas Tech coming out of spring ball. We'll have the defensive side coming up next. But as always, great stuff from you, my Joe. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all for watching, and until next time.